The rhythm of healing, the Octaves method. O is for observation, through stillness we find meditation and breath work that quiet the mind. In silence we listen, the answers are clear, awareness emerges, dissolving the fear. C is for compassion, for self and for all, embracing the good, the struggles, the fall. With kindness we grow, we nurture, we mend, learning to love ourselves as we extend. T is for therapy, a path we explore. Daily we practice unlocking the door. From journaling to mindfulness, healing begins. Each step is a victory as peace settles in. A is for animals and laughter so bright, like children at a play, their joy taking flight. With playfulness and movement, we rediscover the way to heal through the fun that we often delay. V is for victuals, nourishing and pure, detoxifying the body and keeping us sure. We choose what we eat with intention and grace, fueling our journey at our own pace. E is for exercise, where movement is free. We stretch and we bend in sweet harmony. Flexibility grows with choices we make. In strength and in stillness, our bodies awake. S is for socialize, where self-growth begins. Others reflect our triggers and the places within. Through relationships, our true selves we find, growing and healing with each tie that binds. The Octaves method, where all behavior makes sense. We just need to find the sense it presents. We just need to find the sense it presents. We just need to find the sense it presents.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Season 5 of the Trauma and Social Work Podcast. I am KJ Alexander here with my co-host, Tonya Octave, and today we have a lot of important information to dive into. But before we get started, I'm going to go ahead and let Tonya tell a little bit more about herself and what this podcast is about.
Hi, everyone. My name is Tonya Octave, and we are going into Season 5 of Trauma and Social Work Podcasts, where we will be discussing and diving deep into my book called Heal the Mind, 7 Strategies Towards Mental Wellness, Happiness, and Success, Exploring Trauma, Mental Wellness, and Ways to Live a More Balanced Life. And before we begin, just a simple reminder that this podcast is for informational purposes only. It is not intended for medical, psychological, mental health, or legal advice. Although I'm a licensed professional, this is not a formal type of treatment. We may talk about things like hypnosis and meditation and things that we would do in a therapeutic, from a therapeutic perspective, but it's not a form of treatment. For individual questions about your wellness, your happiness, and your success, please seek out a professional. And if you are experiencing a mental health crisis, do call 911 or go to your nearest emergency room.
Great, awesome. That was amazing. So with that being said, I want to make sure I tell the audience, if you haven't already, follow this page on Spotify, YouTube, and any other platforms we post episodes on. Make sure you subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any upcoming episodes in the future. And with that being said, let's go ahead and get started. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the channel. This is the Trauma and Social Work Podcast. My name is KJ Alexander, and I'm joined once again with my co-host, Tonya Octave. And we are continuing our discussion of the Heal Thy Mind book. And picking up where we left off, we're continuing our discussion of cognitive behavioral therapy. So just want to read to the audience a section of this book where you discuss CBT, which is the acronym. So, besides implementing play therapy to help patients, I use cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT. CBT helps a person to understand their thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. This modality is based on discovering faulty and negative thinking patterns. Some of these thinking and behavioral patterns are learned from parents, and others are learned in the child's environment. The idea is to identify the thinking and behavioral errors, and then learn techniques to unlearn these patterns and replace them with helpful and positive thinking patterns. By learning to control thoughts, individuals can gain the ability to direct their thoughts in a particular way. If the thought is, I am stupid and I will never complete this book, then I will feel discouraged and I may sleep more or distract myself from my book writing days. I can change this thought to, although it may be difficult, I can work on and finish this book. I am a good writer with helpful information to share. If I think this way, then I will feel inspired and, in turn, complete the book. So I'll go ahead and stop reading right there and want to kind of just break down what we've talked about so far. So it seems like in based on what you put in this book that CBT is a therapy style that is definitely for somebody who suffers from a lot of negative thinking patterns and has a desire to want to learn new habits in order to create a better life for themselves. So my question would be, how do you think that, what are some ways that a person can sort of recognize and identify that this style of therapy is right for them?
I think if it's someone who wants to, or they're starting to notice already some patterns in their behavior, so they'll question themselves. They might say, usually it comes out through dissatisfaction in relationships. Why am I dating the same person over and over? And just the name is changing, but it seems like there's something there. So there's some sort of repetition going on. Or challenges in family relationships, but maybe it struggles with all of the family relationships. You may notice that when something happens, there's a tendency for the mind to always, or more often than not, go to this, the glass is always half full.
Yeah.
Like the struggle to see the positivity in life, the struggle to be optimistic, that really, the thinking patterns are distorted. So somebody who might be drawn in that way, someone whose defense mechanism tends to be more intellectualization or rationalization, that may be a good approach from them, because you're going to use that in terms of your clinical treatment with the individual. CBT is just such a powerful tool, and an approach that really just helps to shape an individual's, their thoughts, their emotions, their behaviors. And it's used to treat things like anxiety and depression and stress. And it even works with phobias. And so it's a way to kind of think about the brain as this magnificent engineering, mathematical, scientific, artistic machine, and how can the thoughts be manipulated and understood and maybe even directed in a different way so that kind of positivity can come out from that. Um,
Okay.
and so, like, even here, it continues with cognitive behavioral therapy, really helps patients in several ways. It allows patients to understand their own thought process better. It helps them to understand their thinking errors. It helps them to make choices about change. And so I even go into some examples of what that looks like. So, but it really is kind of focusing on that negative thought pattern, that doesn't move us to a place of alkalinity, a place that is moving us in the direction of wellness. Often those thoughts can be acidic to our cells, acidic to our thought process, and even affects internal kind of methods related to that.
Yeah, very interesting. So this definitely would be beneficial for somebody who is more has more self-awareness, or at least enough self-awareness to understand that their current thinking process, there may be some error to it. Not necessarily saying that, it's completely negative all the time, but there may be certain aspects of your thinking process and decision choices you make where you kind of realize that there's some error to this and you want to kind of get on the path to correction. So,
Yes, because you're kind of wondering, why am I always showing up in this way? And sometimes people don't recognize it. Sometimes people don't recognize that their thinking patterns are like all or nothing, or black and white, or, like yes and no. And there's never, the mind wants to go to, I'm never good enough, versus saying, like, there's all these other possibilities. And there's a good exercise I'd like to kind of show you, and because
okay.
it can be useful for daily life stuff. And you're right, it doesn't necessarily have to always kind of be negative, but you can use the methods of cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, in just about anything. And what it's most commonly known of is in terms of a triangle. And on one side of the triangle, you'll have the thoughts. On the other side, you'll have the feelings. And then below, you'll have the emotions. So if I were to ask you, KJ, think of a thought that comes up. Think of a thought maybe that you had yesterday, and you can kind of remember a little bit of some of the details surrounding the thought. But maybe a thought that was a little bit more activating.
Okay.
Okay.
Sure. Well, I just have to say, I feel like me personally, I'm very fortunate to be a person who I'm generally very positive and optimistic. I don't really let negative or intrusive thoughts kind of control me. But I will admit at times, especially when I'm in traffic, probably would be the most is when because sometimes people do like to cut you off or drive at certain speeds that can be annoying. So I would have to say, I don't suffer from road rage, but the thought does occur, especially driving in certain areas. It's just there's some people who are more defensive drivers and some people who are more actively trying to race faster than everybody. So you have to be careful, but I would say that whenever somebody does try to do something crazy on the road, those are the times where I usually have the most intrusive thoughts, almost to the point to where you want to fight somebody.
So,
But
what would be the thought when someone does something crazy on the road? What is the thought that comes up for you?
well, it's kind of just why is this person able to drive? Like they should have their license suspended. They shouldn't be allowed to drive like this.
So, maybe why are they driving? So, when you're
Yeah.
driving and maybe you notice something, like somebody doing something you said as crazy, the thought that you have is, why are they driving? Right. And when you think that, why are they driving? What feeling are you identifying with that thought?
Let's see. Maybe a feeling of trying to justify why this person is allowed to drive, something like that.
And I think you're kind of, this is an interesting, but something that is difficult is sometimes we struggle with one, two, or all of these areas. Sometimes it's harder for us to identify a thought. Sometimes we think our thoughts are our feelings. Sometimes we can't even identify feelings. Sometimes we only identify feelings, and it makes it hard to connect that to our body. So when I think of a feeling, I think of like happiness and sadness and anger and frustration and humility, all of the feeling words. So when we go back a little bit, and when you have that thought, because somebody is doing something crazy, and you think, why are they driver? Why are they even driving? What feeling, that emotion, what does that come up when you have that particular thought?
Well, I would say maybe definitely anger
Okay.
is a feeling. Um, and then probably like a feeling of like worrying about my own safety and the safety of others
Okay,
at
so
times.
worry. So maybe you notice anger is just a fun stuff. I'm not going to get too much into depth of anger right now, but you would notice in terms of feelings that anger and worry would come up. So when you think, why are they driving? Ugh, anger is coming up. Maybe a little bit of worry is coming up in terms of feeling. What do you notice in your body? What happens in the physical body?
Um, well, I feel like because I'm also driving, there's a lot of like adrenaline that's kind of rushing.
Hmm.
Almost feels like you're about to fight somebody, but you don't actually get in a
So,
fight.
what is your physical body doing when this surge of adrenaline is coming up?
Let's see. Um, Probably like a lot of just muscle tightness. A lot
Okay.
of like balling up fists. You may even like try to like throw a punch in the air or something like that, or like slam on the driver's wheel or something like that.
Okay.
But I'm not
Perfect.
really a person who honks a lot in traffic, but it may happen on occasion.
Okay, or you might even get a honk out of there. And there may
Yeah.
even be a verbal expression that comes along with that,
Yeah,
right?
sure. Yeah.
And so let's go back down this, right? And look at this. And so when the thought comes up, why are they driving? We know that anger shows up. We know that worry shows up. And in the body, we know that there's tightness in the muscles. Maybe the foot will slam on the brakes. Maybe the fist will get tighter, right? What if we change this thought? So, what if people are doing things crazy in traffic? What could be a different thought that you could have instead of why are they driving? What could be a different thought?
Um, I guess a different thought that I could have about that would be to ask myself, what is this person going through today that is making them drive this recklessly?
So, if we kind of reframe that a little bit, what could we say? This person is going through what?
This person is going through a bad day.
Ah, so if we think all the craziness with the traffic is going on, right? And we think, this person is having a bad day. What feeling would that invoke with you?
Um, I guess I would feel a little more sympathetic for a person because it would let me realize that we all have bad days sometimes, and it doesn't mean that we're bad people.
So if we have the thought, that person must be having a bad day, we know that the feeling of sympathy might show up. What would we notice in our behavior? If you are feeling sympathetic, what happens in your behavior?
Mm, I would say that my behavior definitely gets a little more accommodating to the other person and what they're going through. Um, yeah, probably just a little bit more understanding and trying to sympathize with the person.
So when you are understanding, if I couldn't hear your sympathy or hear your understanding, how will I know that there is sympathy in your body? What will I see in your body?
That's a good question. Um, Perhaps maybe more of a like laid back response. Not as much muscle tightness. Probably just just more relaxed, regular breathing patterns. Yeah,
Okay. So let's go over this because this is some good stuff. When you think, why are they even driving? You know that invokes some anger. You know that may invoke some worry. Then there's this muscle tightness. Your fist might get tight. You might slam on the brakes, right? You kind of talked about adrenaline, kind of a surge of adrenaline rushing through the body. And then when we switch that, and the thought is, ooh, that person must be having a bad day. You noted that it kind of invokes sympathy. You're like, oh, you can kind of relate because you can relate to the having a bad day. You get that. And what you notice is your body remains or becomes even more relaxed. The muscles go from being tight to this relaxed state, and that your breathing has this calmness to it. And so maybe one of the ideas could be the thought, if we wanted to work on this. Who controls your thoughts?
I do.
You sure? You sure it's not me? Maybe part of it if I get you in hypnosis.
Maybe somewhat, yeah, for sure.
But right, you control your thought. So when you are in the moment and you are driving, you control whether or not your body will release cortisol or adrenaline, whether or not your muscles will be tight or relaxed, whether or not anger will show up versus sympathy, simply because you can control the thought. All kinds of chaos on the freeway, everybody doing all kinds of stuff. Because even the word chaos is a perception. But you control whether or not that person, that thought is, they shouldn't drive, or maybe they're having a bad day, which controls the outcome. This is how CBT works. Now, in therapy, I'm going to add some other stuff and some really great twists. Because I am going to talk about adrenals. Because adrenals impacts whether or not your adrenals will impact your hormones and what particular hormone needs to be released. And I think about it, if I have the thought that why are they driving, and that causes me to release cortisol, that will lead me to a depleted state. And if you've been following along in these podcasts, it will lead you in fight or flight. Why? This isn't Mama Bear. This isn't Papa Bear protecting our little babies when we're driving on the freeway, unless it's to like maybe avoid an immediate accident. For the most part, it's not, though. It's because maybe something is going on with us. Maybe we're not getting enough sleep. Maybe we're not moving our body. Maybe we're not getting enough stillness, enough quieting of the mind, enough meditation, enough calming of the thoughts, controlling the thoughts. It also, I will talk about food and how the food is going to encourage one thought or the other. Because if you had 3 cups of coffee, because you're rushing in the morning and you didn't eat breakfast, so you don't have any healthy sources of protein, and then you get in the car, and that night you were tossing and turning all night because maybe you were staying up watching TV or on your phone, all of that contributes. Then you get in the car, it's likely that thought about somebody else and them not driving is going to occur. But if you had a good night's sleep, if you ate something like an herbal tea and a healthy source of protein, avocados with hemp seeds, and maybe a drizzle of olive oil on it, maybe some turmeric, and blend it in, and you had something and you weren't rushed in the morning, and you had your herbal tea or your hot protein drink, the ones that I like at the morning, and you get in the car, then when all of this goes on, you're just going to say, oh, God, a lot of people are having a bad day. My life is amazing, but I get it because I used to be there. And you're going to enjoy that ride. And you're going to be in the rest, digest, and healing state, all that you could control because you are the one that controls your thoughts.
Yeah.
That'll be my charge, please.
Yeah, absolutely.
CBT, kind of like a little bit. There's so many other beautiful aspects of it. So, what do you think about it? Because this is the first, for our audience, we didn't practice this. This is the first time, the first introduction to CBT. So, you were kind of like a little baby, a newbie. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, this is my first time really taking a deep dive into this particular subject, but I think it is very interesting to know. And I know you know this for sure, but a lot of what we eat has to do with our mood and regulation,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of it starts when we're really young. Unfortunately, a lot of people develop these eating habits, and if you ask a kid like, hey, what does your daily diet look like, a lot of times you hear, oh, cereal, McDonald's. You don't really hear a lot of fruits or organic vegetables. So I think that once people start to kind of have a more balanced diet and they get those minerals and vitamins as a regular part of their diet, because a lot of people have been kind of diagnosed with these conditions, and a lot of times these conditions are really just a result of a mineral deficiency or vitamin
Mm.
deficiency. So I think if
I
we
think
can,
that is so important. And I'm glad that you said that. Our food system, I don't even want to talk about how
yeah,
warped the food system is, but our food system, has changed over the years, and our body is not adjusting with all of the processed sugars. And so, I mean, you can see because it's kind of creating this disease. But the soil and the nutrients that we even get from our foods, when they're in their natural forms, that's even being depleted. And so, eating a salad 100, 200 years ago is different than the type of lettuce that we get now. So, there is a theory out there that most disease, one of the underlying issues is because of nutrient deficiencies. So that is, in your work with me, that is the first thing that I start dropping little baby seeds about is nutrition and supplements. And if you ever been around me when I talk, I always mention chlorophyll to begin the conversation because I think it's
yeah,
so beautiful and such a healing supplement to put into your diet to help to start cleanse your blood, to help start working with some of those heavy metals that are in the body that have accumulated for years. So I always kind of say with chlorophyll, you can take there's two different types. You can take the small green pills, or you can get the liquid pills. I do both because I just love the taste. But I think you are heading in a great direction when you say, like, some of the stuff that underlines our mood and our behavior and our thinking patterns is because we're deficient and our cells are trying to communicate they're struggling.
yeah, absolutely. And I feel like what we put in our bodies is just one of many crucial steps, but it's one of the most important steps. And it kind of reminds me a little bit about the show, The Sopranos. A little bit. A lot of people may
Mm-hmm.
have watched the show, but if you remember in the show, Tony Soprano is this guy who's always angry and yelling and has all these anger issues. And he's getting prescribed, Prozac by his therapist or whatever, and they're trying to figure out like how to kind of get his issue corrected. But if you look at every time he sits down to eat, it's always cold cuts, it's always meat, the salami with the spaghetti, and it's always like you don't see any vegetables or fruit, rarely anytime. So I kind of think that was kind of one of those moments where I was like, hey, maybe if you would, kind of change your diet a little bit, there wouldn't be such a need for Prozac. But yeah, that was just one thing I
He
kind of
also
noticed.
suffered from panic disorders and phobias, right? So you remember
Yeah,
he would be grabbing his heart and having a panic attack, right? Like, did we not think, aside from all the stress going on with being like a mafia,
yeah, mafia
godfather
boss.
or
Yeah,
something? But you're right. The diet that he was putting into it was also kind of agitating these things in his mood to kind of, bring up more of this aggression. There is a belief in some cultures that when you eat meat, you are eating the emotion of the animal when they died.
mm,
and how they
Yeah.
live their life. And for if you're not outside of kind of like humane ways that animals are raised, if you're buying things in fast food, they're getting the poorest meat quality out there. That is one belief, and so you can choose to have that belief,
Well,
or you
even
can choose
science will
to
tell you
dismiss
that.
it.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Well, even science will tell you that stress can be stored in the body of animals for
Hmm.
sure. So you don't.
Hmm.
That's not even really an opinion. That's a fact. So I mean,
So if
people.
Tony Soprano came to me as the character and said, "What would I do in treatment?" I said, "Oh, well, how can we get more chlorophyll in your diet? I may not start taking out the meat first because you don't want to take out things before you build it up." And so,
Yeah,
like, when you start therapy, there's this idea of building a relationship and building rapport. We're also building the body. And so, a part of building the body is how can I work with your mind to get you to be at a place where you will want to bring in healthy nutrition. And for some people, that's not eating a bowl of salad. That might be taking chlorophyll pills or putting some chlorophyll in their water because
yeah,
it's different. It's a different experience. I'm working on giving a different association so that it can move you towards wellness, not keep you in this kind of depleted, toxic state of the body.
yeah.
An interesting fact. So when the Sopranos series was running, I remembered I was in college and it used to air, I want to say on Sunday. And so this was a part of how kind of corrupt the mind can be, but also influenced by media and the entertainment industry. So I was in college at the time. So my thing was I was doing CBT. I had to do my
Mm,
homework. I had to make sure I was up on all classes. I was eating well. If I did all of that, then on Sunday I could watch The Sopranos and eat a pint of ice cream. And there would be two that I would go from strawberry Haagen-Dazs to Haagen-Dazs butter pecan. And that's what I felt was a treat. Ooh, that was also causing a disease state in the body. So that's why I think it is just
mm,
as important to work because we think that we could be doing something. It was like motivating me to do my homework and to get things done and to get
yeah,
good grades, but it was creating a disease state in the body. And so that's why, reaching and working out with an expert is good because the mind is going to convince you you deserve this. You deserve that bottle of wine or beer after work. You've had a long day. And I'm going to say, well, you probably deserve a shot of wheatgrass. You probably deserve to
mm,
sit in a sauna and detox. Those are probably the things that you deserve so that you can get the impurities out of the body, the impurities out of the mind, and purify the spirit, right? Like those are the
yeah,
things that you deserve, not a pint of ice cream. Because what that did is that added to the toxicity in the body, which clogged up the thoughts, which probably makes studying even harder for myself. I could have definitely have come up with a better plan earlier on. So thank
yeah.
you to all of the Soprano fans out there. I did enjoy the series, but I'm glad now that I'm at a state that I would make definitely different choices.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely, for sure. So yeah, just to kind of wrap up this conversation we've had, cognitive behavioral therapy is definitely something that I recommend for people with enough self awareness to understand there is something in their thinking patterns or processes that they do want to change. And just bring more awareness to it. But a person, I feel like for this to actually be successful, a person has to have a strong enough desire to want to change, because I'm sure you've seen all the time people who, they talk about how they want to change, but when it comes time to actually, put the action forth, there isn't any real follow
It's
through.
hard.
So
It's hard.
yeah,
That's why you
it's
need help and support
exactly,
and
exactly.
an environment that's encouraging of it. Because, change is hard because we really should reframe it because the thought is if I think change is hard, then it's going to invoke a feeling of difficulty. And then my behavior, there might be some resistance. I might be like this, right? Change is a beautiful journey that you can embark on. And you are going to enjoy many things about yourself. That may lead to a feeling of liberation, of curiosity. Then your behaviorally, you might dive into it with a different level of a passion, right? So I don't like to think that change is hard. I like to think of change as a manifestation of a journey that I'm just glad that I get to embrace consciously and be aware of. And so even with that, like we can use these concepts for all kinds of things in terms of how we think. One thing that I kind of suggest for people when they're teasing with these ideas is when something happens and you notice something comes up, either your fists are tied or your heart is going fast or your hands are on your hip or feeling is starting, like an intense feeling is started, or like you're just really in love, like whatever it is, the intensity, ask yourself in that moment, what am I thinking? Ask yourself in that moment, ooh, what feeling is this? Ask yourself in the moment, what is my body doing? And you will find that there will be difficulty for you to do it. You'll say, well, I'm feeling that that person should not be driving. That's not really a feeling. That's a thought. You may say that, well, I think this would make me angry. Well, that's not really a thought. That's a feeling. And most people are like, I don't even know what's going on in my body. I don't know the different sensations because they're so disconnected from the body. So when things are coming up in terms of intensities, particularly you'll get them with relationships. You'll say, why is this person doing this to me? There'll be some thought around that theme. And that is a beautiful opportunity to say, yes, thank you, relationship. You are no longer, I didn't go over this. And this is a part of CBT. You are no longer going to react, but you are going to respond. So those are kind of like additional things. So when the behavior comes up, are you reacting in the situation? Or are you responding in the situation? And your ego is going to try to convince you you're responding.
Yeah, I do like that very much. That's a very good point. And yeah, it's all about responding versus reacting. I think that's a great place for us to leave it for today. Is there, before we close out, is there any information you want to leave the audience with?
Just in the links, I did do the YouTube videos that goes into these concepts in a lot more depth and a lot more playful ways. So I did one on play therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy, and psychodynamic therapy to give you just the versatility of all three approaches. And so the links to the YouTube videos will be there.
All right. Excellent. Excellent. Well, I want to thank everyone so much for tuning in. If you haven't already, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. We will have more videos coming out in the near future. So with that being said, thanks again for joining in. Everybody out there, be safe. Until next time, bye-bye.
Wraps up another episode. I hope today's discussion provided clarity and tools you can use in your daily life. If you're ready to take the next step in the healing journey, I'd love to connect. Head over to my website to schedule a free 15-minute consultation. It is a great opportunity to ask questions and see how we can work together. And while you're there, download my complimentary workbook designed to help you reflect, grow, and move towards mental wellness, happiness, and success. Thanks for listening, and I will see you next time. The rhythm of healing, the Octaves method. O is for observation, through stillness we find meditation and breath work that quiet the mind. In silence we listen, the answers are clear, awareness emerges, dissolving the fear. C is for compassion, for self and for all, embracing the good, the struggles, the fall. With kindness we grow, we nurture, we mend, learning to love ourselves as we extend. T is for therapy, a path we explore. Daily we practice unlocking the door. From journaling to mindfulness, healing begins. Each step is a victory as peace settles in. A is for animals and laughter so bright, like children at a play, their joy taking flight. With playfulness and movement, we rediscover the way to heal through the fun that we often delay. V is for victuals, nourishing and pure, detoxifying the body and keeping us sure. We choose what we eat with intention and grace, fueling our journey at our own pace. E is for exercise, where movement is free. We stretch and we bend in sweet harmony. Flexibility grows with choices we make. In strength and in stillness, our bodies awake. S is for socialize, where self-growth begins. Others reflect our triggers and the places within. Through relationships, our true selves we find, growing and healing with each tie that binds. The Octaves method, where all behavior makes sense. We just need to find the sense it presents. We just need to find the sense it presents. We just need to find the sense it presents.